Hey everyone, welcome to Maple Minds. We're live right now on TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. And I have a guest, Mo, and her username on TikTok is Paddling My Canoe. And we're going to talk about Stolen Sisters Memorial March that she has organized. And so if you could, um, Mo, uh, give us a brief history and meaning of Stolen Sisters and MMIW, MMIP, what it means, and yeah,
First, I'd like to just introduce myself, if
yes,
that's okay.
yeah.
Uh, Delati, Monique, Kwe. My name is Monique. Hello. I am Mi'kmaq Acadian, Portuguese, Irish, English. I am from the unceded territories of Unama'ki, Mi'kma'ki, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. My mother's family are from Petamaquaski and Bucktush, New Brunswick, and it is on her side that I am Mi'kmaq Acadian. And I am an uninvited guest on the unceded territories of the Lekwungen speaking people, the Sanghees, and the Esquimalt nations. And I give my thanks to our ancestors. And I thank you, Polly, for allowing space to speak about this most important day of remembrance. Stolen Sisters Memorial March here in Victoria will be held on Sunday, February the 16th. We will be gathering at 11:45 in Centennial Square, and we will be proceeding down Government Street to the BC Legislature. We'll have speakers, drummers, dancers, and light refreshments. This is first and foremost a memorial march. We aim to not just remember, but to tell and remember the lives and the stories of our missing relatives. We uplift our survivors and our family members. We give space for Indigenous communities and allies to come together to speak in a safe space about gender based violence. Do you have another question in regards to our march?
Yes. What do you hope people will take away from attending this march?
Well, our call out to all Canadians is to, of course, come into our circle, but to decolonize themselves, to listen, and to use their voice to denounce gender based violence. Indigenous women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus people go missing 12% more than any other race in Canada. And first and foremost, I want allies to know that they are welcomed. Gender based violence affects every race, every age. It doesn't matter on your gender, your sexuality, your age, your income. It affects us all. So we all must work together to end this epidemic.
Thank you very much. So, anybody can attend?
Absolutely, anybody can attend. We have everybody in strollers all the way up to elders. And we encourage that if you do attend and you have questions, please ask them. We have to have dialect.
Have you had any challenges this year with uh, organizing this year's event at all?
The event itself is coming together fairly smooth. Our community is extremely supportive. Last year we had about 2,000 people in attendance, and this year we are planning that numbers may be a little bit higher. And again, the emphasis for the march is it is a memorial. One of the biggest challenges that we do have when we're planning the march is trying to get the information out there that we're not a protest, we're not a rally. So we ask that all political signage be left at home. The only thing that we encourage people to carry are posters of their loved ones, messages for our missing and our murdered relatives. We also ask that use of the red handprint only be used by Indigenous people. There's a lot of misinformation in regards to the red handprint. People think that it's okay to use it because it shows solidarity. And actually, it should only be used for Indigenous people because what it symbolizes is silence. Our voices are not being heard, but it also symbolizes the silence from the Department of Justice, from law enforcement, from governments federally, provincially, municipally, and unfortunately, overall, our Canadian fellow man.
Yeah, that was that was another question that I had was, what do you think are the biggest misconceptions about MMIW um, and MMIP 2S?
One of the biggest misconceptions that I get all the time is when I speak about missing people. People are really quick to say, go look on the res. And even though Indigenous people do have a lot of intimate partner violence, but so does every other race, our women, girls, 2S LGBTQIA plus people, even our men and our boys, are actually taken by strangers, acquaintances, and friends. A lot of it is, personally, I think a lot of it is because we have been portrayed in a very sexually available stereotype, especially in the entertainment field.
Mm-hmm.
People have sexual fantasies about Indigenous men and women. You know, you always see like the beautiful Indigenous woman who is dressed very provocatively, and that's not regalia. Regalia is actually the opposite. It's very spiritual and very respectful. And the same with men. I mean, you see the stereotype of the Indigenous warrior.
Mm-hmm. We have a couple questions on TikTok.
Okay.
Smarshy is a Métis woman, and they're wondering how they can get the word out. And they also would like to know if, as a Métis woman, can they also use the red handprint?
Absolutely, they can still use the red handprint. Métis are part of Indigenous people. And how can you get the word out? Just being informed and speaking about it. You can personally reach out to me and we can connect.
Smarshy says we're not a monolith cosplay mascot.
Absolutely, and well said.
Well said. How have governments and law enforcement responded to calls for justice? Where do you see the gaps?
Where do I see the gaps?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would have enough time to fill in the gaps.
Exactly.
I'm going to use a personal example if that's okay.
You can use anything you like.
I'm even lost for words to even know where to start on this question because it's so daunting. It starts from the beginning. When one of our people go missing, and every second counts, we go into law enforcement. And before they even know the details of the situation, they tell us to come back because they see Indigenous people as virus people. But everyone in life comes from different walks of life. And it doesn't matter what you do for a living, it doesn't matter your education, it doesn't matter where you live or how much money you have in the bank. If you go missing, the same justice should be given to you, regardless of the color of your skin. But it's not, and we're still fighting this. Myself, I had an incident happen, and somebody tried, well, not somebody tried to, they did portray themselves as being somebody than they weren't. They misrepresented themselves as one of our partner agencies, and I arranged a meeting at the partner's office. And when we attended, this person, not only were they not staff, they then claimed they were a volunteer, which was not correct. I found out they got their information on one of our posters for our march. And when I spoke to police, I was told to call or to go online and fill out a form. Now, this person gave me information in regards to one of our latest missing persons.
Wow.
That's appalling. Every second counts. And if this guy would go to the lengths that he did, that's premeditation.
What the heck?
And you raise the flag and you get told, fill out a form because it's not an emergency. We'll get to it when we get to it.
But he
That's
had
not,
he had information on another missing Indigenous person.
he asked me if I could comment, and I said, we do not comment on our missing unless we are given direct permission from the family or it is a family member. And she got very upset and said, oh, you're awfully confidential. And I said, it's not just confidentiality, it is respect, first and foremost. And that is how we are raised.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to say some details that would shoot shivers up anyone's spine.
Wow. And so you called the police, and the police said, go online and fill out a form. It's not an emergency or not. And they didn't give you any information as to how long they would, you know, uh, act on this form.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I don't know where I don't know where everybody lives, but here in my city, you can't even walk into the police department and see an officer. They will direct you to a phone in the corner where you go and it rings into the non-emergency line, or I guess you could call the emergency line, and you could be on hold for literal hours. My
Wow.
husband and I had an incident with my son came home from school. He wasn't involved directly, but he had video footage of somebody who had stopped and took out a machete and was waving it around kids. You think that information would be of essence as soon as possible?
Wow. That's ridiculous.
Yep.
So, yeah, that shows the gaps in the police.
That's
Especially
just
when you,
this.
sorry, especially
That's
when you
just,
can't.
yeah, sorry.
Sorry, you go first.
No, I'm going to say, especially, just remember, that's just the start of the gaps. We could not take enough time to list all the gaps.
Let's see. What can allies do to support Indigenous women and gender diverse people in this moment?
The first thing they can do is show up. And not just show up to be the check in the box for the day, but show up, decolonize themselves, do the work, and walk beside us.
What does
So
decolonization look like?
for me,
Yeah.
decolonization is actually everyone's responsibility. The same as you'll hear people say that as an Indigenous person, you must take on self determination for your sovereignty. It is the same for every Canadian. They must take up their walk to decolonize their mind. So you need to read, you need to ask questions, you need to seek truths. You can't go by what's reported in the media or what you learned in a history book
Hmm.
because we know who wrote the history book. And everyone is welcomed into the circle. Everyone. We are raised that everybody is related. North, south, east, and west. We are all relations. And I think people have forgotten that.
So your march on the island here on Vancouver Island is in Victoria on February 16th, 2025 at 11:45 a.m. And everybody will meet at Centennial Square and then march to the BC legislature. There's also one in Nanaimo, is there not?
That's correct. The one in Nanaimo starts tomorrow at 3:30.
And what are the details on that one? If you
Putting
know offhand.
no.
If not, that's okay. We can move on.
Can we move on? It's
Yeah.
downtown Nanaimo at the park. We're meeting at 3:30 and then we're walking for about a mile and a half
Hmm.
and then ceremony. There are guest speakers. Hopefully I won't bore anybody and put anybody to sleep. And we have dancers and drummers.
Winnipeg's is on Saturday, says Raven on
Love to Winnipeg.
TikTok. Yeah, Winnipeg is on Saturday, apparently.
Yeah.
Are there any organizations or petitions or resources that you recommend for people?
I recommend that people go and read the 231 calls for justice.
I gotta write this down. Hold on. You've said this to me before, but I have a terrible memory, and I never wrote
It's
it down.
it's okay. And for those who don't know what the 231 calls for justice are, the 231 calls for justice was written by a national inquiry. And this national inquiry did travel across Canada and south of the Medicine Line for input. This document was completed in 2019 and presented to our federal government. We are now 2025, and only 2 of the 231 calls have been implemented.
Wow.
And in the calls, there are calls of action for every sector in Canada. So it's very informative. And for us as a local group, we have a goal of implementing some of those actions in our own community to ask our municipal and our provincial governments to take accountability as well as law enforcement and public safety. We have to start somewhere. We can't sit back and wait for the federal government. Billions of dollars has been spent into the 231 calls, but yet we're not advancing those calls.
No, I didn't. I didn't. I had no idea about the calls for justice until you and I met at the first protest.
Hmm.
Yeah, and you had spoken about them, and I thought they were beautiful. Like to listen to, uh, just the ones that even because you stuck to the ones that were about the 2S LGBTQIA plus community,
Absolutely.
mostly on when you gave your speech, and then I was like, oh, I need to go back and look at these. Actually, I'm just wondering, would you be up to maybe having a weekly show where it's just you and you talk about all of these things.
I I absolutely would be, and I would love to have, open that to my brothers and sisters so
Mhm.
we can hear their voices and their stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thank you for your time today. I'm just wondering, do you want to swing over to TikTok for a few minutes and then you can answer some questions and we can have a couple guests up for maybe 10, 15 minutes?
Sure, why not?
Okay, we'll
Take it
end
easy
here.
on me, guys. This is my first time ever going live.
Okay, we'll end here and then we'll move over to TikTok and you can go on your profile there.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks.
everybody for joining us on YouTube. Don't forget, everybody is welcome to join the Memorial March on February 16th, 2025 at 11:45 a.m. in Victoria, BC. They'll meet everybody at Centennial Square and then they'll march to the legislature. And also on Friday, February 14th, right?
February 14th in
It,
Nanaimo at 3:30
in Nanaimo at 3:30.
in downtown.
Thank you, everybody. So we're ending on YouTube.